Have you ever been near someone who leaves you exhausted for reasons you cannot explain? Someone whose presence quietly unsettles you, whose words seem harmless, yet somehow leave you feeling smaller, more confused, and strangely off balance. Maybe you have felt it deep in your gut, that quiet inner warning that something is wrong, even if your mind cannot fully name it. That feeling matters. Because evil does not always arrive with obvious cruelty. It does not announce itself with rage, with threats, or with a monstrous face. Most of the time it appears ordinary. It smiles at you across the dinner table. It praises you at work. It speaks gently. It listens carefully. It tells you exactly what you needed to hear, and that is precisely what makes it dangerous. It hides in plain sight, behind warmth, behind charm, behind generosity, behind the appearance of concern. You may know someone for months, even years, before the mask begins to slip. And by that time, the damage may already be deep. But here is the good news. You do not have to remain blind to it. You do not have to keep doubting your instincts. You do not have to stay defenseless against people who thrive on confusion. The ancient Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus spent their lives studying human nature. They lived among betrayal, manipulation, deceit, and ambition, yet instead of becoming bitter, they became clear. They learned to see people as they truly were, not as they pretended to be, and that clarity became their shield. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the best revenge is not to become like the one who harmed you. That wisdom still matters. Because learning to recognize evil is not about paranoia. It is not about hating people. It is about awareness. Deep, steady, unshakable awareness. The kind of awareness that helps you notice patterns before they trap you. The kind of awareness that sees through charm, through lies, through control, through false kindness. The kind of awareness that protects your peace before someone else learns how to disturb it. Think for a moment about the people closest to you. Your co-workers, your friends, your partner, even your family. Is there someone who often leaves you feeling drained, guilty, or uncertain, even when you did nothing wrong? That is not a question of fear. It is a question of honesty. Because the sooner you see clearly, the sooner you reclaim your power. In this video, we will walk through 10 evident signs that someone near you may carry dark intentions. These are not wild suspicions or dramatic fantasies. They are patterns. Clear patterns. Observable patterns. The kind that reveal a person's character over time. Each one is rooted in Stoic wisdom and in real life. And by the end of this video, you will be better equipped to recognize toxic behavior, protect your inner peace, and guard your mind from those who would use your goodness against you. Awareness is your shield. Discernment is your strength. And once you learn to see these patterns, manipulation loses much of its power. Because most people do not recognize danger when it first appears. They see it only after the trust is broken, after the confidence is damaged, after the peace is gone. Why? Because evil is patient. It does not rush. It studies you. It earns access. It builds trust first, then slowly begins to tighten its grip. That is why you must learn these signs now, not later, not when the wound has already deepened. Now, while your mind is still your own. So if you are ready to see what others miss, subscribe to Stoic Ocean and leave a comment below before we begin. Your presence here tells me something important. You are not here to live blindly. You are here to see clearly, to grow stronger, and to protect the peace you have fought to build. Let us begin. Number 1. Constant manipulation. Seneca once suggested that fear and control often walk together. And nowhere is this clearer than in the behavior of a manipulative person. Manipulation is rarely loud. It rarely begins with open hostility. More often, it starts quietly. It sounds like concern. It looks like help. It feels like guidance. But beneath it, something else is moving. A manipulative person does not want an equal relationship. They do not want mutual respect. They want influence. They want leverage. And eventually, they want control. So they bend the truth. They distort your perception. They plant doubt in places where your confidence used to live. They do not attack your mind all at once. They weaken it gradually until confusion becomes normal. Imagine working with someone you once trusted. In public, they praise your effort. They compliment your work. They make you feel valued in front of the team. At first, it seems sincere. But behind the scenes, a different story unfolds. They quietly mention your mistakes to others. They exaggerate small issues. They frame your strengths as problems. They speak just carefully enough to avoid being caught, yet just effectively enough to damage your reputation. Then, one day, you begin to sense it. Something feels wrong. People respond to you differently. The atmosphere has shifted. So you confront them, calmly, hoping for clarity. But they remain composed. They tell you that you misunderstood. They say they were only trying to help. They act wounded that you would even ask. And suddenly, the focus moves from their behavior to your reaction. Was I too sensitive? Did I read it wrong? Am I being unfair? Am I overthinking this? That is how manipulation works. It does not only distort events, it makes you doubt your own mind. And once that happens, the manipulator gains something far more valuable than your trust. They gain your uncertainty. This pattern appears in personal relationships too. It can look like a friend who always gives advice that leaves you feeling less capable. It can look like a partner who twists every disagreement until you are apologizing for the pain they caused. It can look like someone who says, "I'm only saying this because I care," while quietly cutting down your confidence. Confusion is not an accident here. It is the method. A manipulative person studies your vulnerabilities. They notice where you crave approval. They notice where you fear rejection. They notice where you still doubt yourself. Then they press on those exact places again and again until dependency begins to replace clarity. Soon you start checking their reactions before trusting your own. You start asking what they think before deciding what you believe. You start feeling that only they understand you. That is not love. That is not friendship. That is control disguised as closeness. Stoic philosophy teaches us that freedom begins with self-mastery. Epictetus said that no man is free who is not master of himself, and that insight matters deeply here. Because the manipulator's goal is not simply to influence your choices, it is to weaken your authority over your own inner world. A good person does not make you more dependent. A good person does not make you feel smaller so they can feel bigger. A good person does not confuse you in order to lead you. They strengthen you. They steady you. They help you stand on your own feet. So, what should you do? Step back. Observe. Slow down your reactions. Look at the pattern, not the performance. Do not focus only on what they say. Watch what happens to your peace, your confidence, and your clarity after each interaction. Ask yourself, do I feel more grounded around this person or more confused? Do I feel respected or subtly controlled? Do I feel free or carefully managed? Those questions matter. And here is a simple practice. At the end of each day, ask yourself, did anyone make me question my worth today? Did someone leave me feeling guilty, small, or mentally tangled without clear reason? If the answer is yes, do not dismiss it. Examine it. Was the criticism fair? Was the concern genuine? Or was the confusion designed to keep me dependent? The Stoics reflected daily for this exact reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote to examine his thoughts, his actions, and the people around him. That practice kept him clear. It can help keep you clear too. Remember this. Manipulation begins where clarity ends. Protect your clarity, and you protect your freedom. Number 2, a mask of charm. Epictetus reminded us that appearances can be deceiving, and few things are more deceptive than charm in the hands of someone with dark intentions. Have you ever met someone who seemed almost too perfect at first? Their smile felt effortless. Their words felt warm. Their attention felt intense. They seemed to understand you faster than most people do. They said all the right things. They noticed small details. They made you feel seen, chosen, special. At first, it feels rare. It feels flattering. It feels like connection. But later, something begins to feel off. Because there is a difference between genuine warmth and strategic charm. One creates safety, the other creates access. Sincere charm is natural. It comes from kindness. It grows slowly. It does not demand that you lower your guard. It does not pressure you into quick trust. It does not make you feel rushed into closeness. Strategic charm is different. It studies you. It mirrors you. It adapts itself to your needs, your wounds, your desires. It learns what you have been missing, then presents itself as the answer. That is why it can feel so powerful. A manipulative person knows how to become whoever you most want to believe in, the perfect friend, the ideal partner, the understanding mentor, the rare soul who finally gets you. But underneath that polished surface, the motive is not love. It is advantage. Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul takes the shape of what it repeatedly entertains. And in people like this, their outward glow often hides inward selfishness. Their charm is not an expression of character. It is a tool of strategy. So how do you see through it? Watch what happens when there is nothing to gain. How do they treat the waiter, the cleaner, the stranger, the person who cannot elevate them, reward them, or admire them? That is where the truth begins to show itself. Also, pay attention to speed. False charm often moves too fast. They open too quickly. They praise too quickly. They create intimacy too quickly. They make you feel uniquely understood before real trust has had time to form. That is not always connection. Sometimes, it is calculated acceleration. I once knew someone who could make almost anyone feel important. He complimented people with incredible precision. He remembered small details. He made every person feel as though they held a special place in his life. But over time, a pattern emerged. His warmth had conditions. His compliments always opened doors. His generosity always returned with a hidden invoice. He praised people when he needed loyalty. He listened carefully when he wanted information. And the moment there was nothing left to gain, his affection cooled. Sometimes he even spoke badly about the same people he once admired. That is when the mask slipped. And this is important. Manipulative charm does not always feel fake. In fact, its power often comes from how beautiful it appears on the surface. That is why instincts matter. If someone charms you, but something in you still feels uneasy, do not silence that discomfort. Do not call yourself paranoid. Do not rush to explain it away. That quiet tension is often wisdom. It is the part of you that notices misalignment before your mind has found the words. Stoic philosophy teaches us that truth does not need decoration to survive. Real kindness does not need an audience. Real goodness does not perform. It remains steady whether people are watching or not. So observe the gaps. Watch the difference between what they say and what they do. Notice whether their kindness fades when admiration disappears. Notice whether their warmth changes when they stop benefiting from your presence. That is where you will find their real character. Seneca warned about flattery for good reason. Flattery can intoxicate. It can make you feel chosen, praised, and safe while quietly blinding you to what is happening beneath the surface. So remember this. Charm becomes dangerous the moment it asks you to stop observing. Look beyond the smile. Look beyond the polish. Look beyond the performance, because real goodness never needs a disguise. Number 3, lies without conscience. Marcus Aurelius taught that nothing should be said if it is not true. For a person of integrity, truth is a duty, but for someone malicious, truth is merely an obstacle. They do not lie from confusion. They do not lie just to avoid embarrassment. They lie deliberately. They lie strategically. They lie to gain power, to escape consequences, and to reshape how other people perceive reality. And perhaps the most dangerous part is this: they lie without remorse. To them, deceit is not a painful compromise. It is a normal tool, as natural as breathing, as easy as smiling, and because of that, their lies can feel surprisingly convincing. Imagine a person you trusted, a friend or colleague who constantly told stories that made them appear more capable, more noble, more essential than they really were. One day they claim full credit for an important project. They speak with confidence. They describe every detail as if the entire success rested on their shoulders. And if you did not know better, you might believe them. But later, when you examine the emails, the messages, the actual record, a different truth appears. Others did the work. Others carried the burden. They simply stepped in at the right time to claim the reward, so you confront them. And instead of admitting it, they pivot. They tell you that you misunderstood. They focus on side details. They make the issue sound far more complicated than it is. And before long, you are no longer discussing their dishonesty. You are defending your perception. That is one of the clearest signs of gaslighting. Gaslighting is not just lying. It is the deliberate attempt to make you question your own memory, your own judgment, and your own reality. It is what happens when someone repeatedly insists that what you saw did not happen, that what you felt was irrational, or that your concerns are proof that something is wrong with you. This is what makes it so destructive. A liar hides the truth. A gaslighter trains you to distrust it, even when it is right in front of you. And once you start doubting your own mind, you become easier to control. You become easier to redirect. You become easier to silence. Master manipulators understand this. They do not only want to win an argument, they want control over the entire narrative. They want to stand at the center of reality and force everyone else to orbit their version of it. So how can you tell when this is happening? Ask yourself, do I often leave conversations with this person feeling confused? Do I keep apologizing for things I do not believe I actually did? Do their stories change depending on who is listening? Do I feel pressure to abandon my memory in favor of theirs? If the answer is yes, pay attention. You may be dealing with someone who lies as habit, not as exception, but here is something important to remember. Truth is resilient. It does not need constant repair. It does not require layers of explanation. It does not depend on emotional theater to survive. Lies do. Lies need maintenance. They need cover stories. They need fresh distortions. They need your silence. They need your confusion. And that is why, over time, they begin to collapse under their own weight. Stoic wisdom teaches us to judge by actions, not appearances, not promises, not persuasive words. Actions. So when someone's words and behavior keep pulling in different directions, trust the evidence. Trust the pattern. Trust the repeated mismatch over the polished excuse. Ask direct questions. Stay calm. Do not rush to fill the silence for them, and do not let their confidence be mistaken for honesty. Some people speak smoothly because they have practiced the lie many times. Set boundaries. Demand clarity. And when dishonesty becomes a pattern, do not keep negotiating with it as if it were an isolated mistake. A healthy relationship can survive truth. A toxic one usually depends on avoiding it. Here is a practical step you can begin using today. When you suspect deception, do not confront immediately in anger. Do not argue in the heat of confusion. Instead, observe quietly. Write things down. Record what was said. Note the date, the context, the details. Then later, compare their words with the evidence, with the messages, with the facts, with what actually happened. Patterns reveal themselves very quickly when they are forced to stand beside reality, and that is the key. The most dangerous lie is not the one that hides the truth. It is the one that teaches you to distrust your own mind. Guard your mind carefully. Guard your truth fiercely. Because once a person starts trying to rewrite your reality, They are no longer simply being dishonest. They are trying to possess territory that does not belong to them, your inner world. And that must be protected. Number 4, lack of empathy. Seneca observed that human beings are made for one another, not to move through life as isolated creatures consumed only by themselves. Empathy is what allows us to meet another person's pain with presence, patience, and humanity. It is one of the clearest signs of real character. And when empathy is absent, something important is missing. A truly malicious person may know how to speak kindly, how to appear attentive, how to perform concern, but underneath it all, other people are often seen as tools, obstacles, or opportunities. Not souls, not hearts, not lives to honor, only pieces to move when it benefits them. That is why a lack of empathy is not just an unpleasant trait. It is a warning sign, because when someone cannot genuinely care about your joy, your grief, or your struggles, they become capable of using your vulnerability without remorse. Imagine sitting with someone you call a close friend. You finally open up about something heavy. Maybe you are grieving. Maybe work has been crushing your spirit. Maybe you are simply tired from carrying too much for too long, and instead of meeting you with care, they interrupt. They redirect. They say, "You think that's bad? Listen to what happened to me." And just like that, the moment shifts. Your pain disappears. Their story takes center stage. You are no longer a person in need. You are an audience. That moment matters. Because sometimes the cruelest form of emotional neglect is not open hostility. It is the experience of standing before someone with an honest heart and still feeling completely alone. And with people like this, it is rarely just one moment. It becomes a pattern. They ask how you are, but do not really listen. They offer sympathy, but only for appearances. They grow impatient when your pain lasts longer than they expected. They show interest only when your struggle affects them directly, and when your sadness does not benefit them, they emotionally withdraw. That is not care. That is convenience. Now compare that with a truly empathetic person. When they ask how you are doing, they stay present for the answer. They do not rush you. They do not compete with your pain. They do not make your sorrow feel like an inconvenience. They listen. They make room. They let your experience be real. That difference is everything. One kind of person helps you feel seen. The other leaves you feeling invisible even while speaking. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "No more arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." And a good person does not merely talk about compassion, they embody it. Naturally, quietly, without needing credit, without needing attention, without calculating what they will gain from your trust. So pay attention to how people respond when life becomes hard for you. Who stays? Who listens? Who makes space? And who seems irritated that your pain has interrupted their comfort? Those answers will reveal more than words ever will. So what should you do when you recognize this absence of empathy? Set boundaries. Protect your emotional world. Stop offering unlimited access to people who only know how to take from it. Do not feel guilty for stepping back from those who leave you feeling drained, dismissed, or emotionally abandoned. Compassion is a strength, but compassion without discernment becomes self-neglect. The Stoics understood this. They valued kindness, but not foolishness. They believed in service, but not surrender. You can be loving without becoming available for exploitation, so choose your circle carefully. Stay near those who celebrate your joy without envy, and stand beside your sorrow without impatience. Stay near those who can hold space for your humanity without trying to turn it into something useful for themselves. Your heart is not a resource to be used. It is something to be respected. Remember this. If your pain becomes their inconvenience, they were never truly with you. Number 5. The hunger for control. For a malicious person, control is never just a preference. It is a need, a source of power, a source of identity, and often a source of security. They do not simply want to influence your choices. They want access to your thinking. They want authority over your decisions. They want to slowly shape what you believe, what you fear, what you attempt, and what you avoid. Because if they can control your inner world, they can eventually control your outer life. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that your mind belongs to you, not to external forces. That is one of the deepest truths in Stoic philosophy. And it is exactly why controlling people work so hard to weaken your trust in your own judgment. Control rarely arrives with chains. It arrives with advice, with concern, with gentle warnings, with the quiet suggestion that you are not ready, not wise enough, not stable enough, not capable enough to choose well without them. That is how it begins. I once trusted someone who seemed deeply helpful. At first, their guidance felt warm. They offered suggestions with confidence and calm, and I appreciated having someone I believed was looking out for me. But over time, their support began to change shape. Every decision I made was questioned. Every ambition I had was treated as slightly unrealistic. Every step toward independence was framed as risky, premature, or unwise. If I wanted to try something new, they would remind me of all the reasons I might fail. If I felt confident, they would call me impulsive. If I trusted myself, they would act as though I was making a dangerous mistake. Little by little, I stopped listening to my own judgment. I started checking their reaction first. I started needing their approval before moving forward. And by the time I recognized the pattern, the truth was clear. They were not protecting me. They were positioning themselves between me and my own freedom. That is what control does when it is disguised as care. It does not always feel violent. Sometimes it feels responsible, wise, protective, even loving. But if a person continuously weakens your trust in yourself, they are not helping you grow. They are training you to depend on them. They may use guilt. They may use shame. They may use praise at just the right moment. They may tell you they only want what is best for you, but if the final result is always the same, if you feel smaller, more hesitant, more dependent, less free, then you are not being guided. You are being managed. Epictetus taught that freedom is one of life's highest aims, and freedom begins the moment you stop handing your inner authority to someone else. So here is a simple practice. Before making an important decision, pause and ask, does this align with my values? Not their fears, not their preferences, not their expectations. My values. That question matters because controlling people want to keep you reacting to them instead of returning to yourself. But your values must become your compass. If something violates them, that discomfort is information. If a decision brings you closer to integrity, clarity, and self-respect, do not let someone else's need for control pull you away from it. People who truly care about you do not need to dominate you. They do not fear your growth. They do not resent your independence. They do not panic when you begin to think clearly for yourself. They support your strength. They do not feed on your hesitation. So stand firm. Protect your thoughts. Guard your judgment. And notice carefully who becomes uncomfortable when you stop asking for permission. Because every time you trust your own well-examined judgment, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every time you say no to manipulation, you strengthen your freedom. Marcus Aurelius also said that the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. So do not let anyone shape your reality until it no longer feels like your own. Remember this. Control becomes dangerous the moment it teaches you not to trust yourself. Before we continue to the next sign, if this video is helping you see more clearly, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps more than you realize, and it allows us to keep building this space together. Now, let us continue. Number 6. Blame, games, and deflection. Seneca understood that many people prefer comfort over judgment. They want to believe what sounds convincing, especially when it comes wrapped in emotion, confidence, or wounded innocence. And that is exactly what manipulative people know how to exploit. When they do wrong, they rarely face it directly. They redirect. they reframe. They reposition themselves as misunderstood, mistreated, or unfairly accused. And before long, the focus is no longer on what they did. It is on how badly they feel about being confronted. This is one of the clearest signs of a harmful person. They do not carry their own guilt. They place it on your shoulders. They turn accountability into an attack. They turn your honesty into cruelty. They turn their failure into your burden. And if you are conscientious, patient, or emotional generous, they will use those traits against you. I once worked closely with someone I deeply trusted. We were handling an important project, and when problems began to surface, I expected an honest conversation. Instead, she immediately began criticizing my method, my planning, my communication. The tone was subtle. That was the trap. She sounded calm, reasonable, even helpful. She framed it as if she was offering insight for my own good, and for a moment I almost accepted it. But something did not sit right, because the facts did not match the narrative. The delays had come from her oversights. The missing pieces were on her side. The confusion began where her responsibility had been ignored. Yet somehow, the emotional burden kept landing on me. That is when I saw the pattern. This was not a search for truth. It was a transfer of blame. And people like this become very skilled at moral reversal. They do not simply avoid responsibility. They make you feel responsible for confronting them. They speak as if your clarity is cruelty, your memory is unfairness, your boundaries are aggression. That is why you must slow down and separate facts from narrative. Write down what actually happened, what was said, what was promised, what was done. Then place that beside the story they are telling. The gap will often reveal everything, because truth does not need ornament. It does not require constant reshaping. As Seneca suggested, truth stands firm, lies must be maintained. Marcus Aurelius taught us to remain anchored in what is real. And when dealing with someone who constantly deflects, that discipline matters. Do not argue endlessly inside their emotional maze. Return to facts, return to sequence, return to evidence. Ask clear questions, stay calm. And do not let their confidence make you question what you clearly saw. A person who cannot carry their own guilt will eventually try to hand it to you. Do not accept it. Set boundaries. Refuse to participate in conversations designed only to blur responsibility. You do not need to become harsh, but you do need to become clear. Because accountability is not cruelty, it is maturity. It is integrity. It is the foundation of every healthy bond. People who truly love you can say, "I was wrong." They can face discomfort. They can repair damage. They can honor truth even when truth is humbling. That is character. So when someone repeatedly refuses to own their actions, believe the pattern, not the excuse. It tells you exactly who they are. Number 7. The pleasure of pain. One of the coldest signs of a malicious person is this. They seem to come alive when someone else is hurting. Not always in obvious ways, not always through open cruelty. Sometimes it appears as a smirk, a joke, a sarcastic remark, a strangely eager interest in another person's humiliation, a brightness in their face at the exact moment someone else is breaking. And if you watch carefully, you will see something chilling. Their pleasure is not accidental. It is revealing. Epictetus advised us to stay near those who make us better. But a person who enjoys the pain of others does not want growth, unity, or shared strength. They want comparison. They want superiority. They want the temporary relief of seeing someone else beneath them. That is why this behavior often begins small. A quiet laugh when someone stumbles, a mocking tone when a person fails, a gleam of satisfaction when another is corrected, embarrassed, or exposed. Taken alone, these moments may seem minor, but repeated over time, they reveal a character that feeds on the weakness of others, and that is dangerous. Because people like this do not rise through discipline, virtue, or meaningful effort. They rise emotionally by pulling others down. They gossip, They provoke, they humiliate, they magnify mistakes, they study vulnerability, and when pain appears, they treat it like entertainment. I once knew someone who always seemed most energized when speaking about other people's failures. If a co-worker made a mistake, she was the first to mention it. If someone felt embarrassed, she somehow seemed a little lighter, a little more alive. One day, a co-worker was publicly reprimanded by a manager. The room fell silent. Most people looked away, but she chuckled, only briefly, only softly, but it was enough. At first, I wanted to believe it meant nothing. Awkwardness, perhaps? Nervous energy? But over time, the pattern became impossible to ignore. She did not feel stronger by building herself. She felt stronger by watching others shrink. That is not confidence. That is emptiness looking for relief. Seneca wrote that adversity can teach us, and for a person of character, it does. It deepens humility. It builds resilience. It sharpens compassion. But a malicious person sees adversity differently. They do not see another person's struggle as something to understand. They see it as something to enjoy, a spectacle, a chance to feel less inadequate for a moment. Because at the root of this trait is often insecurity. They need others to fall so they can momentarily feel as though they have risen. But that feeling never lasts. Someone else's suffering cannot heal their inner emptiness. It can only distract them from it briefly. That is why the cruelty repeats. Stoic philosophy teaches us to protect our self-worth and choose carefully who we stand beside. So notice the signs. Who seems amused by pain? Who becomes animated when others fail? Who shares humiliation with unusual pleasure? Who seems brightest in moments that should invite compassion? Those details matter. If someone looks most alive when another person is breaking, do not ignore what that reveals. Create distance. Stay close instead to people who celebrate your victories without envy and meet your hard moments with dignity and care. Stay near those whose strength does not require another person's weakness. Because true joy does not feed on suffering. True strength does not need an audience for cruelty. And true character is revealed not by how someone shines in success, but by how they respond to another person's pain. Remember this. Anyone who grows brighter when others break is not safe to stand beside. Number 8. Isolation as a weapon. Marcus Aurelius wrote that human beings are made to work together, like hands, like feet, like the upper and lower rows of teeth. The Stoics understood something essential. We grow stronger through honest connection, through shared burdens, through the presence of people who help us stay grounded in truth. That is exactly why a malicious person often tries to isolate you. They know that as long as you remain connected to loving friends, to wise family, to people who know your character, their control over you will always be limited, so they do not always attack you directly. Sometimes, they simply work to make closeness feel unsafe. The process is rarely sudden. That is what makes it so dangerous. It begins quietly. A comment here, a doubt there, a subtle criticism of the people who love you most. Nothing dramatic at first, just enough to make you pause, just enough to make you wonder, just enough to plant distance. I once knew someone who seemed caring in the beginning. Supportive, attentive, protective even, but over time small remarks began to appear. Your best friend does not really understand you. Your family judges you more than you realize. I'm the only one who truly sees what you are going through. At first, it sounded like concern. That was the trap, because comments like these do not need to be loud to be effective. They only need to be repeated. Repeated often enough, they begin to change how you feel about the very people who once gave you strength, clarity, and belonging. That is how isolation works. It does not always remove people from your life overnight. It poisons trust slowly. It makes you second-guess those who care about you. It makes loyalty feel uncertain. It makes support feel complicated. And once enough doubt has been planted, you begin withdrawing on your own. That is when their influence grows. So pay attention to the early signs. Does someone regularly criticize your friends or family? Do they act threatened when you spend time with others? Do they make you feel guilty for staying connected to people you love? Do they create tension every time you reconnect with your support system? Do they position themselves as the only person who truly understands you? These questions matter, because the goal of isolation is not distance alone. It is dependence. A harmful person wants you disconnected enough to become easier to shape, to confuse, and to control. The fewer voices you trust, the easier it becomes for their voice to dominate your world. But here is what they never want you to remember. Real strength does not grow in emotional captivity. It grows in honest connection. It grows in relationships where truth can return, where perspective can return, where you are reminded of who you are outside their influence. So if you begin to notice that you feel lonelier, more detached, or strangely distant from the people who once grounded you, pause. Look carefully. Ask yourself, did this distance happen naturally? Or was it encouraged, nudged, and quietly shaped by someone who benefits from my disconnection? Then do something simple but powerful. Reach back out. Make the call. Send the message. Meet the friend. Visit your family. Tell someone what has been happening. Even if it feels awkward. Even if pride resists. Even if you are unsure how to explain it. Reconnection is often the first act of freedom. The Stoics never taught that strength meant standing alone. They taught inner strength, yes, but not isolation. They knew that community, friendship, and shared reason help protect us from error. So protect your bonds. Protect the people who have shown you their care through action, not performance. Stay close to those who make you clearer, steadier, and more yourself. Remember this. A controlling person does not always ask you to leave your people. Sometimes they simply make your closeness to them feel dangerous. Do not ignore that. Number 9. Jealousy in disguise. Seneca called envy an ulcer of the soul, and that image is a powerful one. Because jealousy does not always burst outward in obvious hatred. Often it works inwardly, quietly, corroding goodwill, corrupting praise, and turning what sounds like concern into something poisonous. That is why jealousy becomes most dangerous when it wears a mask. A jealous person does not always attack your success directly. That would be too clear, too easy to notice. Instead, they soften their blow. They wrap it in advice, in care, in reason, in the appearance of wanting the best for you. But underneath, something else is happening. They are trying to reduce your joy. I once shared an achievement with someone I thought cared about my growth. I had completed something meaningful, something I had worked hard to build. Her response sounded supportive on the surface. That is great, but next time, maybe push a little harder so it is really impressive. At first, it sounded harmless, even helpful, but the more I sat with it, the clearer it became. She had not celebrated what I had done. She had stained it. She had taken a moment that should have felt whole and quietly inserted a sense of insufficiency. Not enough, not quite. Almost good, but not fully. That is how jealousy in disguise often operates. It does not silence your victory completely. It simply makes sure you cannot enjoy it without doubt. You will hear it in phrases like, "That is wonderful, but do not get too excited." Or, "Yes, you did well, though someone else managed even better." Or, "I'm just being honest. I only want you to improve." But here is the important distinction. Real feedback brings clarity. It is specific. It is constructive. It points toward growth without diminishing your value. You may feel challenged, but you still feel respected. Jealous undermining does something different. It leaves you deflated, smaller, less certain. It offers no real path forward. It simply weakens the emotional weight of what you achieved. That is not guidance. That is envy looking for cover. Envious people struggle to celebrate your light because your growth forces them to face their own dissatisfaction. Your confidence becomes uncomfortable to them. Your progress becomes a mirror they did not ask for. And instead of doing the inner work required to grow, they try to reduce your momentum. This is why Stoic philosophy asks us to look beneath appearances. If praise feels strange, if support leaves you feeling cut down, if encouragement somehow makes you question what should have felt good, pay attention. Your instincts notice tone before your mind names intention. A truly kind person does not resent your joy. They do not compete with your progress. They do not make you feel guilty for shining. They celebrate sincerely, and if they offer correction, it comes with respect, clarity, and the desire to help you become stronger, not smaller. So protect yourself. Set boundaries with those who constantly leave small cuts inside your proudest moments. Do not hand your self-worth to people who smile at your success while quietly trying to drain its meaning. And remember this: you do not need to dim your light to make an insecure person feel comfortable. Your success does not steal from anyone else. And the people who truly belong in your life will not punish you for growing. They will be glad to see you rise. That is the kind of companionship worth keeping. Number 10, the unrepentant heart. A mistake alone does not define a person, but a refusal to face it often does. One of the clearest signs of a deeply harmful person is not that they fail, fall short, or do wrong. All human beings do. The deeper warning sign is this: they never truly reflect, they never truly repent, and they never genuinely change. Marcus Aurelius taught that we should spend less time arguing about goodness and more time becoming good through action. But the person with an unrepentant heart moves in the opposite direction. They cling to destructive habits. They justify harmful behavior. They refuse to admit fault. And even when the damage is obvious, they still find ways to protect their image, their pride, and their excuses. In their world, they are never really the problem. There is always another explanation, another defense, another reason their behavior should be understood, forgiven, or ignored. Think of someone who always has an excuse ready. When they hurt someone, they do not apologize. They rationalize. When they are confronted, they do not reflect, they deflect. When someone explains the pain they caused, they call it an overreaction, a misunderstanding, or proof that the other person is too sensitive. Over time, this pattern becomes impossible to miss. They are not seeking truth. They are protecting ego. And that changes everything, because a person who never examines themselves never truly grows. They may become older, louder, more experienced, more skilled at defending themselves. But inwardly, they remain stuck in the same immature patterns. They mistake stubbornness for strength. They mistake denial for dignity. They mistake resistance to change for power. But Stoic philosophy teaches the opposite. To look inward takes courage. To admit fault takes strength. To repair damage takes character. And to grow beyond your worst habits is one of the highest forms of self-respect. A Stoic does not believe that being wrong is shameful. Remaining blind to your wrongness is. That is why the unrepentant heart is so dangerous, not only because it harms others, but because it closes the door to transformation. It chooses stagnation over growth, pride over wisdom, and denial over truth. And eventually, that inner decay touches everyone nearby. The Stoics believed each day was a chance to become better than the day before. To examine yourself, to correct yourself, to refine your character. But an unrepentant person rejects that work. They repeat the same pattern, the same damage, the same excuses, the same emotional wreckage, again and again, year after year. And if apology never comes, if reflection never comes, if repair never comes, then the pattern is the answer. Not everyone is willing to grow. That truth must be accepted. So if you are close to someone who always justifies their harm, avoids accountability, and never sincerely tries to make things right, pause and see clearly. Do not waste your life trying to drag someone toward growth when they are committed to staying unchanged. Protect your energy, protect your peace. Invest your time in people who can face themselves, who can say, "I was wrong," who can learn, repair, and become better. That is humility, that is courage, that is moral strength. Marcus Aurelius urged us to focus our minds on people and thoughts that elevate life. That remains wise advice. Choose people who are willing to do the difficult inner work. Choose people who respect truth more than pride, and choose that path for yourself as well. Because the strongest people are not those who never fail. They are those who can face failure honestly and rise from it with greater character. So remember this: when someone never reflects, never repairs, and never repents, their pattern becomes the truth. So here we are. We have walked together through 10 evident signs that someone near you may carry darkness behind their mask. Some of these signs may have felt familiar. Some may have unsettled you, and some may have brought one face very clearly to mind. If so, do not panic. But do not ignore what you have seen, because awareness changes everything. A harmful person has the greatest power when you meet them blindly, when you explain away every warning sign, when you silence your own instincts, when you stay loyal to confusion. But the moment you begin to see clearly, their power starts to weaken. That is why this video matters. Not because it teaches you to become suspicious of everyone, but because it teaches you discernment. It teaches you to observe patterns, to trust what is consistent, and to stop surrendering your peace to people who have not earned access to it. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that true strength is found in mastery of the mind. And that is where your power lives. Not in controlling others, not in arguing endlessly, not in seeking revenge, in clarity, in discipline, in boundaries, in self-respect. So, stand firm, protect your inner world, and do not let someone else's darkness become a permanent guest in your mind. You are allowed to walk away from manipulation. You are allowed to outgrow what disturbs your peace. You are allowed to choose distance over chaos, clarity over confusion, and truth over emotional captivity. That is not coldness, that is wisdom. If this video opened your eyes, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment, "I see the signs," if you are choosing clarity from this day forward. And share this video with someone who may need these words. Thank you for being here. And remember this: evil loses much of its power the moment you stop meeting it blindly. I will see you in the next video.